My name is Kagonya, and I work at Safaricom Alpha. In fact, some of my colleagues are here from Safaricom Alpha. And Safaricom Alpha, if you've not heard of it, okay, it's just lucky who's here from Safaricom Alpha. I know, you're looking around like for a whole row of people. This is the support they give me on a Friday afternoon. Zero. Yeah, there's no another office, you know, and in fact, if you ever come to Alpha before 10 a.m., you're wasting your time, like, no one's there. The devs come in from 10, 11, etc. But yeah, so Safaricom Alpha is the innovation arm of Safaricom. And so the idea that Bob had was to have us completely separate from the business. So we actually sit right across the road, across Nenana Road. So we don't sit on Wayaki Way. And our mandate is to ensure that Safaricom is relevant in 10 years, 20 years. So it's a heavy mandate, you know, we have to be innovative. So at Safaricom, we have two main teams, partnerships team and products team. I'm under the products team, and that's where the HCD group sits, so the Human Experience and Design group. Also under the products team are product managers, program managers, and of course, developers. So today, I just wanted to talk about HCI, UX, design thinking, HCD, UCD. I know these are terms that are sort of used loosely or used a lot, and I just wanted to provide some clarity, but also to give examples of how we apply it at Safaricom Alpha, and even talk about our flagship product and how we have been able to use design thinking stroke HCI stroke human-centered design in the development of it. So, oh yeah, that's a picture of our actual offices. I know you thought it was Google, right? I'm kidding. That's actually Safaricom Alpha. And we have an open door policy. That thing of Safaricom steals ideas, we don't. We like to collaborate and work with people. So if you ever want to come and hang with the devs who are now too, I'm sure she has, Wango has great examples. She hangs at her office all the time. Just come and hang out with us. So I just wanted to talk about, okay, so human-centered design. I gave this a title that rose by any other name. So human-centered design, user-centered design. In fact, at one point, we called it Mwananchi-centered design, because we realized the term user is only used by guys in UX and drug dealers. So we wanted to make it much more relevant. So then he said, we'll call it Mwananchi-centered design. This was a couple of years ago. They are I'd call it the umbrella, you know, the umbrella of UX, of UI is human-centered design. It's a process. It's a way of thinking. It's a lens you apply to product development, to technology development. What's interesting is that you can apply user-centered design to anything, even to making toys. So I did my master's in the States, and one of my colleagues actually went to work for a toy factory. So nothing to do with tech. Okay, a bit related, but just actual physical toys, not Pokemon Go, for example. But, so those three terms cover the same area. So when someone talks about user-centered design or human-centered design, it's the same thing. Then there's also a lovely friend, design thinking. So what's design thinking? So design thinking was popularized by one of the biggest, I'd say, human-centered design firms in the world, which is IDEO. So they realized, so it's a practical way of applying human-centered design, because they wanted to apply it to businesses, not just to academia. They wanted to apply it to businesses, so come up with design thinking. And design thinking has become very popular. But no, it's a process based on human-centered design, popularized by IDEO. Still, of course, referring to the same set of tools. One thing that design thinking does a lot is design sprints, right? But design sprints are not the only thing you can do when you're doing human-centered design. So that's just a point of clarification. So here, in this picture here, the guy on the right is actually a member of our team. And this is the process we follow. So we're currently building, we're trying to, we're looking at how to take advantage of the fact that M-Pesa is a social network. We think of it as a social network because it combines exchange of data, exchange of phone calls, exchange of messages, and use of the internet, right? So that's where we get the data. And now we're going to add many layers on top of that, including trying to see how we can support people to do commerce. So how do you understand how people do commerce? The best way is actually to go sit with a vendor. So here we have Luis. And we're targeting not, the big shops or anything. We're targeting the smaller vendors. So this lady here, actually, she's a seamstress or a tailor, as we like to call them. And she has a shop. She sells material and then takes your measurements and makes clothes. So we spent the whole about 2-3 hours understanding what she does. And she uses social media to sell her clothes because that's the target audience. How does she use Instagram to do it? How does she use Facebook to do it? So it's much understanding what goes on now. What are the challenges those people have now? And then how can we, using technology, make their lives easier, make their businesses prosper, or get rid of some of the challenges that they have? So we always start with the user. Then, so what is HCI? HCI is now what you go to study in school. That's just a simplest way to do it. As in, you study HCI and then you practice human-centered design, or you can call it design thinking. It's another term. I know, so many terms. That's why I just wanted to demystify it, because some terms are less known, others are misunderstood. When I say I did HCI, they're like, oh, what is that? Human-computer interaction. That's what HCI is. And it's a combination of computer science, design, and psychology. Now, there's a reason I put this graph on the board. Has anyone seen this graph? This is like my favorite graph in the world. So it is, it was done by, it's a 2017 hype graph. So it actually, you've seen it, right? Perfect. So it projects the technologies that are going to become commercial over the next 10 years, right? And so I know we all know about AI, etc., but have you heard of smart dust? Have you heard of the digital twin? So these are technologies that are in academia. So in as much as some people think that academia, all we do is read and then just write boring papers, actually there's real research that goes on that is miles ahead of where industry is. So there's a lot of research here that is still being investigated, but there's also a lot of research here that's going to be commonplace in the next 2-3 years. So this graph shows you that hype. It shows you what's going to become ubiquitous, if I should use the word. And true to this graph, the other day, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, announced that he's democratizing artificial intelligence. Meaning that the same way you have a PC on your lap right now, or a MacBook, is the same way you'll have access to artificial intelligence without necessarily being a very good data scientist. That is mind-blowing if you sit down and think about it for 3 minutes. So there's AI, but it's mind-blowing. I mean, that to me, I was like, whoa. It completely changes the playing ground. So in HCI, we look at what are the existing, or what tools are we going to use? Because at the end of the day, we're solving people's problems with technology. So we have to keep abreast of what technologies are there now, what technologies are going to be there tomorrow. And as I said, Safaricom Alpha, we're thinking 2025, 2040. So what's going to happen then? Right? And another really great thing, we're all in Kenya right now, physically, and we're on the African continent, and we know that the African continent is thought to be behind, but technology has made that very level. Right now, we can have a data science expert sitting right here without having to sit from Google. In other words, all these technologies, they're just several hours of learning them away. But that's the same thing they are from someone else in North America. So in other words, we don't have to be behind anymore. We can actually embark to solve problems using some of these technologies. So yeah, so back to HCI. So human-computer interaction is just what that is, the combination of understanding computer technologies. And then the second part is, and I would ask you guys to really look at this graph, especially devs, and just open up your mind. Everything does not have to be an app, newsflash. It doesn't. There's so many more things. Augmented reality. I love that we had some glasses being played around with. I was like, oh, great. This is perfect. Deep learning, machine learning, Internet of Things. We talk about it, but we see very little of it in real life. So we can explore all the 4D printing. I was like, what is 4D printing? I still didn't get it. So I tried to understand what on earth is 4D printing. But actually what the guy who came up with the term was saying that he wants to print things that now make themselves better. So he'll print like a straw, and the straw will itself transform itself into like a chair. Weird stuff. but it's happening. So we too can be part of these technologies and find very creative ways to solve local problems. I like this quote by Doug Engelbart. He's known as the father of HCI. And his story is interesting. So he was working, he had a great job, and then he decided, you know what, I'm tired of this. I want to solve real problems. And of course, solve real problems with technology because he was a technologist. And that was what sort of carved the foundation of what HCI is. Still using technology to solve real problems. Doug Engelbart is best known for the mouse, you know, the computer mouse that we use. The quote that I like that he said is, the intrinsic rate of human performance is exponential. So that's the Engelbart law. So right now when you talk about AI and we fear that robots will be smarter than us and then kill us and then the world will end, he believes that when you augment a human being with a robot, you only make the human being better, but our rate of value is it's exponential, like we will never be outdone. So I like to go with this law when we have those discussions about how robots are going to take over the world, because I find comfort in knowing that we'll still be smarter than the robots we create. Then design. So I'm going to talk about this later. So design is another term. So in UX and HCI, when you talk about design, it's the big D. I know we can think of design as user interface design or graphic design, but the big design includes development. So it's the thinking around it, the process, the actual making of it, the creation of it. I'll come back to this later when I talk about the process we follow at Safaricom Alpha. And the last surprising thing that human-computer interaction is about psychology. So of course, understanding people. This is just a looping video, still back to the same research. We're trying to see how people, how do they currently sell on social media. The reason I chose this example is because we all know Facebook has done some crazy experiments that prove to us that they can control how we view ourselves. I don't know if you guys remember the experiment they did when they deliberately put sad posts. So if you go into your Facebook wall, you're just seeing very sad stories about anything that's happening. And then they did that study without asking you, by the way. They did, I think, about 3 months, and then they noticed that it affected the moods of their users. And that's what they were trying to prove, right? So technology can affect mood. So they cause people to be depressed, right? But using the technologies that we use. So then you begin to understand, or you begin to ask yourself, the relationship between human beings and computers, it's much, much deeper than calculating how long it will take for me to click, or how long it will take for the page to refresh. It's actually how much the content or the interaction affects my mood or my being. So that's why HCI looks at the person. Behaviors drive use or non-use of technology. So when HCI started, it was much focused about tasks. But then they realized it's actually about human behavior. If you learn what makes someone happy, and then you use that to inform how you design, you make your technology make people happy, and you make money. Because happy customers spend more money, right? There's even, for example, the psychology of waiting. There's a whole study about waiting. So they know for sure that if you're waiting for something and you know how long it will take, like if I know I'm going to wait for 1 hour, that 1 hour will feel much, much shorter than another person sitting right next to me who does not know how long they're waiting for. That's why you even have status bars that show you 0 to 100% is going to take 5 minutes. So the psychology of waiting was used to inform how we design some systems in computers. So apart from psychology, there are other ologies that are investigated when we're thinking of how to design system. Anthropology, cognitive science, epistemology, ontology, linguistics. When I was studying, when I was doing my doctorate, I was looking at how can we use technology, video conferencing in particular, to help grandmothers in rural areas teach culture to the diaspora. But now I needed to understand African traditional knowledge. So I had to start investigating epistemology and ontology. First of all, I had to learn how to pronounce those two words because they're so difficult. But then I had to understand how can that way of thinking inform what technologies I used. And that really shaped what I ended up building, the platform I ended up building. So that's a summary of human-computer interaction. It's a mesh of computer science, design, the big design that I'll come back to, and the ologies, psychology, anthropology, etc. Because you have to understand what technologies are there, what tools do you have, that's a technology, how do you make them, what process do you follow? And then how do people behave, What human behavior, attitudes, perceptions, you need to understand that, whether it's about a person or a society. Then, what falls under this human interaction, human experience design, user-centered design, human-centered design or user-centered design? What are some of the skills that fall under this huge umbrella? There's UX design, which many of us are familiar with. There's user experience research, graphic design, visual design, information architecture, human factors. I know some of these I'm just rambling them and you're like, what on earth are they? Please, if you have a question about what any of them is, feel free to ask. In fact, if you have a question at any point in time, just put up your hand. I don't mind when people interrupt when I'm talking. What I'm trying to just demystify is that UX UI is only a tip of the iceberg when you're coming to design, when you're designing experiences, when you're designing a product. These are the things can be considered. An interesting one actually is content design. Who would think that your content has to be designed in a particular way? So you have to learn how people read, the Z. People read in a Z manner. Read, then skip, go to the end. So when you learn that, then you have to know how you design that page. You have to know about maybe, people say that right now, the reason why we have 1 minute YouTube videos for when you're demoing something is because I guess our concentration span has greatly reduced thanks to Snapchat or Instagram, I don't know. But now you have to know how do you design your content to ensure that you deliver the best value to your customers. So there's content design. There's sound design. Who would have thought, our ears, we can listen to sounds, but past, I think, 20 hertz, we can't listen to anything. It's 20 kilowatts, yeah. We can't, so then that means you know your range when you're designing for some things. Sound, it's, there's acoustics, there's so much involved. But even the experience of sound, the experience of sound in itself can alter moods. So you study that and you learn that. So if you want to create an environment, I think restaurants have got this right. The colors, is it yellow that makes you hungrier? Is it orange? There's a particular color, there's particular music. Yes. Yeah, so it's all understanding all this and the effect it has on people. Then you design your interface or your restaurant or whatever around it. Human factors is mostly in the area of airplanes. One thing I found really, really interesting is that in the 1980s or 70s, what they noticed is that very many Asian airlines kept on dropping, or crashing, that's the better word, crashing. And everything was fine. The plane was fine. They checked the systems fine. Everything is fine. Everything it does, everything is fine. You know what the problem was? The cultural difference. So, in Asian countries, it's very disrespectful to go against the word of your senior. So your senior can be your boss, also the captain, and then you have the co-pilots, right? So you're there as a co-pilot, you're chilling, you're seeing a mistake happening, but you're like, can't do it, man. I can't tell him he's wrong. And it causes the plane to crash. You would think that that's completely bizarre. But it's human, it's, again, the psychology, the understanding cultural behavior. It's completely bizarre. I mean, I thought that they were making up this story, but actually it was true. So these are some of the things you study in human factors, right? Because then they always used to just blame it on, oh yeah, it's the pilot, it's the pilot. But actually it's the relationship or the communication between the two of them that limited their communication. So maybe they'd want to say something, but by the time they do, it's too late, and unfortunately, we have a plane crash. Yet the plane was perfectly fine, the weather conditions are fine, the pilots were highly skilled, but still they crashed, right? So it's not just about the technology you build. Other factors can influence how your technology is adopted, is used, or is trashed, or causes accidents, unfortunately. I like this visual. It's by a blogger whose name I've forgotten, but I can send you details later. But it now just shows you how some of the skills I've talked about, how they come together. So for example, a UX researcher, their responsibility to do research, then ideation, synthesis and ideation. A UX designer does research all the way up to prototyping and design. So overlap, that's the word. A web designer usually does put the design and actual building it. A front-end dev will build it. Visual designer, usually they stick around here. Interaction designer, so prototyping and design. And interaction design is very different from visual design, because interaction design, you have to ask yourself, like for this phone that I have, you know the reason why, I mean, it's an obvious one, but the reason why the Samsung has, you can reduce the screen of your Samsung, because people with small fingers, right? They can't get to this edge. So now with your Samsung, you can, I'm sure on your phones you can do that, right? You reduce the screen so that now it only fits here. I've forgotten how to do it. But then this is understanding how people interact with that device and your interface. So is it a tap, double tap, click, three finger swipe, 2-finger swipe, whatever. There's an area here called the area of reach. So you try and ensure that most important things are here. And it's a whole interesting field around interaction design. How does the person interact with the device or with your app or your software? Then you have the unicorns, the ones who do almost everything. Those are the rare ones. If you know one, please let me know, we'll hire them. So the unicorns who do from research to ideation to design to even implementation, right? So this is just a very good summary of those roles, how they overlap, and what each person does. And so we're here to the D. This is now a very long process. I'll just go over it slowly, but literally feel free to ask. So this is the process we follow at Safaricom Alpha when we are building our products, right? So I'll just start with the colors. So this first color, these ones are research. Highly research intense activities. Scoping would say, okay, what domain are we going to look at? Is it agriculture? Cool. And then I will investigate what problems are there in agriculture for maybe maize farmers. Now investigate and go deeper. Then we can do design sprints, whether it's for 3 days or 5 days or even 1 day, we do design sprints. Then these are now tasks that fall under the human experience and design group. So whether it's from user requirements generation, then you have the product managers who do the roadmaps. Then here we have the devs. So devs will come in here, where they'll do the development, of course, launch an MVP. Testing, bug fixing is a shared activity. And then finally, the business model development and scaling. So usually, many processes that are centered on, human-centered design, they sometimes forget these two very important parts. Because when you finish building your product, you need to ensure people use it, right? And for it to really catch fire, you need to develop a business model. Then after that, you scale it. So maybe if you start with 100 people who have downloaded your app, how are you going to move it from 100 to 1 million, right? So this is a new set of skills that are needed. So here we usually get people who know growth marketing or growth hacking, people who can help us move from a little tiny MVP into now a product that hopefully half of Kenya uses. So like currently with Bonga, we have our flagship product is called Bonga, and we're in this stage here for MVP. So we've opened it up to a very few number of people. So you have to sign up, become a tester, and then as you're testing, and it crashes all the time. I mean, it's Annie's nodding her head because she's like, you probably use it and it just keeps on crashing. Paula, we're still tightening up the screws on that. But it's fine. Let it crash. In fact, there's a quote that says, if you ship your product and you're not embarrassed about it, you've shipped too late. So we were very embarrassed when we were launching our MVP because we knew that some things were just going to fail. And they actually did, right? And they're continuing to fail. But we're fixing them. So we're doing a lot of testing, bug fixing, upgrades, testing, bug fixing, upgrades, and we're learning a lot, We're really, really learning a lot, and that's been beneficial to the team. And then now after that, so in parallel, trying to build a business model, which we'll test it, and hopefully the product will scale. So these activities, the beauty of working on Bonga is that it helped us to craft this process. So this process, we've crafted it as we went along, We thought, okay, we have to add this, we have to remove that, we have to put this, we have to do that. And it's not new. It's based, again, on human-centered design or user-centered design. Where you start with investigation, there's a lot of user research here, user research there, or desk research, market research here. Design sprints, of course, we invite experts. So for health, for example, we have doctors. We actually get medical doctors because we don't know much about health. We're tech people. So invite doctors to do design sprints with us. Sometimes we even invite patients. depending on what it is. And then we do user requirements definition. We go to the field, or we do it in the lab, or we do it remotely. And then we continue, build a prototype. A prototype can be a paper prototype, or a prototype that you can design using Adobe, Photoshop, stitch it together with InVision, create a prototype, test it in the field. Then we create the high fidelity ones. Then finally we have a product. Then you keep on, it's a loop, it's a loop, it's a loop, right? So this is a user-centered design process that we've tailored to fit ourselves. The same way IDEO made design thinking and it made it work for them. It worked so well, then now they use it and have, and it's used widely. This morning I took part in a design sprint, and this was by, the company is called Think Wrong. And again, Think Wrong is another design process based on human-centered design. And they tried design thinking, didn't work for them, but then now they created another one, Think Wrong, which has worked wonders for them. So you yourselves in your companies and organizations, once you understand human-centered design, can come up with a process that works for you. As long as, I mean, the ground rule is you combine understanding people, technology, and design, you know, actually building it and testing it and prototyping it. So, I'd like us to try a simple exercise, right? A very, very simple way for you devs, or for anyone in the room, to test your prototype or to test your actual product with real people, and then to glean and get insights from that. So this exercise is called a Think Aloud, and I always talk about doing a Think Aloud. So right here on the screen, this is just a screenshot of Bonga. So I know when I say Bonga, you think of Bonga points. Remove Bonga points, like find Bonga points, replace Bonga, delete Bonga points. Someone else from Safaricom should not hear me saying that. But anyway, so Bonga is a different product from Bonga points. If I would summarize Bonga in one sentence, it's the combination of payments and messaging as a start, right? What else do we say about it? Bonga in a sentence.
Social interaction.
Yes, social interactions with money. So what we're trying to do as Bonga is combine, what does this look like though? Man, why do people always say that? We're trying to make it look different. But yeah, so it's a messaging platform. So of course it has all the standards of messaging platforms, which means you see messages and who sent the messages. But it has that secret tool called, yes, good. So I need a volunteer. Okay, so I can go to the other slide. I need a volunteer. I see that hand, come on. Volunteer, okay, come on, great. So I'm going to have him do a Think Aloud. So a Think Aloud exercise is very simple. You get one of your target users. So right now we're building a tool for any current user of M-Pesa or any user of mobile money to send messages. So he's one of our, which Nini? Are you on Safaricom or Airtel? I'm kidding, it doesn't matter. So he's one of our target audience, right? He's a Kenyan who has a phone, smartphone. That's it. That's our target audience. In fact, an African who has a smartphone. So I am a dev, or I am a UX person, or I am a UI person. I need to know if the interface that we've designed is actually fitting with how he thinks, with his mental model. I need to know whether all the time we've been spending prototyping and revising our designs and going back and building it again, is it actually what our user would? Is it intuitive to him? Is it understandable to him? So I'll have you do a Think Aloud exercise. So a Think Aloud is a very simple exercise, and it's exactly what it sounds like. I'll give you a task to do, and then you will think aloud as you're doing it. For example, if I'm going to think aloud about how I will grab my phone, I'll say, I'll walk to the table, I'll look at the two, then I'll pick up the phone, and now I've grabbed my phone. So I'm just thinking aloud the steps, because I need to understand what's going on in your brain, and since I can't really see your brain yet, you need to visualize, you need to articulate what you're saying. So I'll give you a task to do. This is a prototype. I actually have Bonga on my phone, but I couldn't figure out how to project my phone onto the screen. So we'll just use a prototype that we had. Yeah, if you have any ideas on how to project an Android on a MacBook, please share that with me. So we're going to use a prototype that was done ages ago. So on this prototype, I'm going to give you one task. I'm going to have you send money to mom. So imagine this is on your phone. What do you think you need to do to send money to mom? What are you going to press fast or go too fast?
Okay, assuming I've opened the app, so I'll tap on mom, and then I'll tap on mom, and then I'll maybe think of how to ask her for money. So probably I'll be like, "Hi mom, I need money." Yes, I'll be like, "Hi mom, I need money," and
Don't ask her how she's doing.
oh, wow, yeah. Okay. So yeah, probably you haven't talked for a while. So like, how mom, how are you doing? Maybe she'll tell me, yeah, things are good. Probably her farm is doing well and all. And I'll be like, okay. And I'll be like, I need cash. I was thinking of doing this and that, buying credit and maybe having lunch or something like that. And she'll be like, okay, like how much do you need? And I'll figure out, I'll calculate. If I ask for 2,000, she might think that's maybe it's little or maybe it's much. Assuming that she thinks that it's much, so she'll be like, I think I can provide 1,500, and then I'll be like, make it 1,800. So we'll be bargaining, you see. And then
So how will you, obviously you'll be talking to her?
yeah, I hope I'm doing well. Am I doing well?
There's no right or wrong.
Okay.
I'm learning. So let's
Okay.
look at the
Uh-huh.
this again.
Uh-huh.
So here you've chatted with mom, you've asked her, Nini. Okay, and then
So she actually agrees. She actually agrees, and she sends me the money, and I'll be like confirmed, and I'll actually, before I say confirmed, I'll send the full message, the transaction, everything, and then I'll say thank you, and she'll be like, karibu, endelea kusoma, make sure you eat very well, make sure you sleep, make sure you yep.
okay, so here you'd use this interface to chat with mom.
Yes.
Assuming this is on your phone. No, I'm asking.
Assuming this is on my phone.
Yeah, so you're using Bonga to chat with mom.
I'm
and
using-
ask her for money.
I'm using Bonga. So assuming she doesn't know Bonga is for asking for money, I'll be like, hi mom, how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I need money. How much? 2,000. So yeah, she sends. And then when she sends, I think the Bonga app will have maybe maybe it will be integrated with maybe M-Pesa or something to maybe tell if I've gotten money. So probably it will be a notification, and probably she'll get it, and I'll also get it. So I'll confirm on my side, she confirms on her side, and that's it.
Okay. So can you imagine that is there anything here that makes you think you can?
I can.
If you look at this screen
Uh-huh.
on your phone.
So anything I can add, or what you say?
No. Anything you can use, yeah.
Or anything I can use. Oh, sorry. So I'll use a text box. Yes, I'll use a text box. Probably I'll use emojis. Yeah.
Emoji is good. Okay.
Yeah. I'll also use the 3 dots on the right. Yes.
What did you use them for?
So maybe to check if maybe the messages have been read. So I'll actually long press on my messages to check whether she has read them. Yeah, and probably the back arrow. Yep. Yes, and also now that this last scene, assuming that I won't have maybe turned off read receipts or anything, I think I'll be able to see it.
That she's read it.
Yeah, that she's read it.
Thank you. What's your name? Brian. Let's clap for Brian. Now, what's interesting is I've learned a lot about what he needs, right? So the red receipt, sending it to mom so she can see that he's actually received the money. He wants to confirm that the message has been sent to her, so the ticks. What I've also learned is that, have you guys learned something? Okay, another volunteer. You can't. Yes, please. So same scenario. Use this interface to send money to mom, to request money from mom. Use this interface and think aloud. Oh yeah, okay. Okay, good. Yeah, this one he always sends
Yeah, that's what happens at this age. You send.
So imagine you're sending money to mom and you're using this interface. It's on your phone. Imagine it's on your phone and you're sending money to mom. How would you send money to mom using this interface, using Bonga?
Okay, so the first thing is, I start up the app and I look at the screen. The first thing I notice is, well, there's something different here. There's a green icon, so what does that do? So, but probably before that, my mom has just sent her usual message of, how are you? And I respond saying, I'm good, and how are you? Normally she says, sawa tu. And when she says sawa tu, I know there's something else. So I ask her, is there anything you need? And she says, yeah, I need to pay for a few things. Can you help? And since I'm in the app, I probably would go and touch the green button because it looks different and it's familiar. It's got an M-Pesa looking icon on it, and see what it does. Then I proceed from there. So I guess it says send money, so I tap on that. And I expect to see a menu asking me how much, and I probably would type a little amount first to see if it works or not. So that would be good for me. I type in 500 bob and I click the send button. So if it bombs out, I can do without that. And then I tap send and I see what happens. So, okay, so there's a response. 500 shillings has been sent to so-and-so. What I'm thinking now is, am I also going to be able to check my M-Pesa balance to see if this is real or not, other than what the app is showing me?
Oh, so you doubt it.
That's what I'd be thinking, like, okay, is this really integrated with M-Pesa? Will I be able to check my M-Pesa balance or not? But nevertheless, I click...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Verify that.
So nevertheless, I continue clicking green and see what happens next. I was expecting that, so because I pay for parking as well, so I punch in my PIN and I say send. And I'm waiting, and it looks like I have a notification there. So that looks familiar, but I'm still wondering whether this is, like you're saying, from committee or it's actually from M-Pesa. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yep.
No, he's sending 500, not 400.
Oh.
So actually, as a user, I'm seeing there's a little text down there that says M-Pesa and has a green dot. So I'm wondering, if I tap that, what happens? Will it actually take me into my M-Pesa messages so that I can then see that this is actually integrated into the entire M-Pesa system? But then probably the next thing I'll do is I'll maybe switch to text and ask my mom, have you actually received the money? Yep. Because I'm assuming this is the first time I'm using the app.
Excellent.
Yep.
What's your name, sir?
Wilfred.
Wilfred. Thank you very much, Wilfred. So I've learned a lot from our two users, from our side. The concerns around first-time use, is this really integrated in M-Pesa? Is it for someone from committee? Is it really going to subtract money from my account? And I need a confirmation message from M-Pesa itself. So now it informs us that when we go out to the real world, we still have to ensure that messages are sent from M-Pesa themselves. So actually how it works right now is pretty much how has been shown here. So, I come to my phone. I know you can't see, but, I'll come to Bonga. I initialize Bonga. And then I'll look for, someone. I'll be chatting with them. And then I'll click that button. I'll send them money. I'll put in 2 bob. And then now it will show me the Hakikisha will be there. So it shows the Hakikisha message. And then I'll send them that. Okay, right now it says not connected to server. So we keep on having these crashes. But essentially, it works like this. And the beautiful thing is, at the end of it all, I'll receive a message from M-Pesa itself to let me know that I've sent 2 bob. But also the confirmation comes on the phone. But what this has shown me and limited to me is that
when it takes you to the actual pin on the SDK and not in the app, and it takes you out of the app, so you do the actual pin verification.
Yeah, so that took a lot of work to ensure that it's an in-app pin. It took a lot of work. In fact, that's one of the things we are very proud about. It looks very, very simple, but being able to put in my PIN number, so you see here 2 bob, and then I can put in my PIN without leaving Bonga. that took the dev team, we always congratulate them for that. It took a lot of work, but now it's one of and hopefully our other Safaricom products can have the same experience. Instead of leaving the app, then putting it, and then coming back to it. That's one of the things that.
Getting a call.
Oh yeah, killing that whole process and then, having to come back. So the whole point of this exercise was to give you a very simple exercise you can do with anyone called a Think Aloud. So the main thing about a Think Aloud, you tell the person there's no right or wrong answer. So the first, you learn from every participant, yeah? So by not seeing that green button, it means, hey, is it visible enough or is it not? Or is it something that can be learned? Then you give them an exercise and don't help them. Don't tell them, no, you're wrong, go to click that one. No, don't help them. Let the people get stuck. Let them not see what you thought they were going to see, and then you just write notes and you learn what they're saying. You can do a Think Aloud exercise with as little as 6 people. In fact, the secret number is 6 to 8 people. So Don Norman, who came up with this exercise, did a whole study and calculated, what is because the graph is just going to slope. So at the 8th person, you're just wasting money getting more people, right? You don't have to do 50 people. You don't have to use 50 people to do an Think Aloud, because the results are going to be the same. But you have to be careful about your selection. So the 6 to 8 people you select have to be similar. So that's why you need to know who you're designing your stuff for. So maybe what I'll do is maybe I would select, we're going to maybe working males between the age of 18 to 25 who are urbanites and who have a job. So I'll pick 6 to 8 from there. Then maybe now the same, but now females. Then I'll say maybe rural college students between 18 to 30, male, female, so 6 to 8, 6 to 8. So in each of those small groups, I choose 6 to 8 people, give them an activity to do, just silently watch them, write notes as they do it. It makes us think a lot, especially if you see a trend among the 6 to 8, where like, guys, no one saw that green button, we need to go back to the drawing board, yeah? Or everyone thought it might be from committee. We need to ensure that always an M-Pesa message is sent instead of us guys blocking it and having you only receive the message in Bonga. So that's a very simple exercise, which I hope that anyone can do. And it can really inform what you're making. And you can do this as prototype stage, because this is a prototype. One funny thing is that when we went to the field with this, because the good thing about InVision is that you can send this to your phone, and then it's on your phone. So when we went to the field, people thought it was a real app, but it was just JPEG stitched together, really. So it can give people that feeling of it's a real app because it's on the phone, and then they tinker with it, and then you learn quite a lot. So I'm very happy because now you're all user experience developers. And do you have any questions? Yeah.
My name is Anthony Joroge, software developer at Brick. Question, can I get a loan from Tala using Bonga?
At the moment, a loan from Mshwari using Bonga.
One of the microlenders.
Mshwari. Let's just answer for Mshwari.
So at the moment, we are looking into how. So I talked about Bonga allowing for e-commerce. So we're investigating how the vendors, we can form partnerships so that the vendors on Bonga can get loans. Now, how that will be done is what we're working on.
I've
skipped around your question because there's.
You wanted to add?
Well, what I was thinking is, in the spirit of collaboration, you could have sort of a service that gives enterprise communications to these guys who are still using a platform anyway, to enable their businesses, where they can use Bonga app also as a means of relating with their customers.
Yes.
And hence get to have the same hooks for the microlenders, for them to have those kind of conversations.
You're thinking in exactly our line. So Bonga Biashara is now the product that's aimed at allowing for commerce. So you go to Bonga, and then there'll be Bonga Biashara, and then you can buy shoes, dresses. That means there'll be sellers and there'll be buyers, right? So it will be a two-sided market. And so we're thinking of many more things we're doing because essentially we're collecting a lot of good data. And then Bonga is fully encrypted, so we're not going to read your messages. That was a decision that was made. So, and that's another heavy task. So group encryption is a mess. So right now we're trying to tackle the giant of group encryption. So we'll not read your messages, but we're getting a lot of data through your activity. Yeah, and from that, we are seeing many products that are coming up, and some of them are in the pipeline.
My name is Jimmy, and I wanted to extend the question. If I wanted to put up a storefront in Bonga, I'm assuming Bonga Biashara will be able to do that. How have you envisaged it? Is it a storefront with branding, and then the conversation is with a store person on Bonga, and then that's the interaction? Or is it a marketplace that will be a Bonga Biashara marketplace and people are kiosking or marketplacing kind of thing?
The beauty of Bonga Biashara, it's a product that is in the pipeline. We're learning a lot. We're investigating options. And it seems one of them is more favorable. So the good thing is that Safaricom has two products that are very related. So Bonga Biashara and Masoko. Yeah. So Masoko, again, is an e-commerce platform. But we're not competing. We're actually looking at it. It's a very good relationship. So Bonga is looking at m-commerce from the lens of relationships and transactions. Then Masoko is, now you're a big dog. Okay. Now, you have 100 customers, and then you go. And Masoko, the advantage is that it covers logistics across. Because one thing about Safaricom, it's figured out logistics. We're able to transfer credit from Nairobi to Marsabit in less than 24 hours. So using that, we can still now use Masoko to take advantage of that platform. So these are two different e-commerce platforms. Or one of them we call it m-commerce, right? Mobile commerce, and one is e-commerce, but they work together. So both of those are looking at different options on how, it's a different lens to commerce, but they're extending each other. Yeah. Do you have questions? HCI questions, UX questions? Yep. Oh yeah, you can come to the front.
I was wondering, how do you prefer to synthesize the information that you get from your talk alouds? Like, do you prefer to do like a synthesis of like qualitative information that's just like freehanded notes, or do you have a different way of going about that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the think aloud is indeed a qualitative exercise. In other words, even if one person struggled with something, that's one person we have to think about. We won't say, oh, 90% of the people said, it's not a quant exercise. So we'll do the think alouds. There'll be lots of, note writing. And then we can synthesize it by sticky notes, so writing each point on a sticky note and putting it on the board, then looking at the themes that come up or the problems that come up. Then some of them will be very easy design fixes. It would be, even getting to this logo, I'm happily surprised that he could see that this is the M-Pesa logo. Some people could not understand it. So some few tweaks had to be made to it. Then others will be much more, there'll be fixes which will force us to change the content, the length of the content, or to the perception that that green dot is clickable, for example, is what I've learned today. So we will group these into design fixes, which now will tell the UI people, fix this. Then some will tell the devs, fix this. Then others will go back as a UX team and start to think about it. How was this understood? The perception that there's trust. So trust, they can't trust that this is really connected to M-Pesa. So how are we going to ensure that there's trust in Bonga? That's a whole new problem. So we divide them into those three groups, and then now each team goes and sort of thinks about it. And sometimes we do it as a collective exercise. So we'd print the screens up and put them in a room like this, every single screen. Then we have the feedback, and then we'll have war rooms, because there'll be disagreements. Devs are saying one thing, the solution is different, and this, oh, but if you change that dot to be bigger, it looks ugly, and then, oh, if you do that, and yeah, and then hopefully we'll come up with a solution. But it's a very qualitative exercise, or sometimes an Excel sheet, put it all together, then just manually go through it and then pick up the themes. At the end of it, I like to write reports. No one likes to write reports apart from me. So write reports so that we can synthesize it and share it with other Safaricom teams who maybe are looking at something similar or just want to keep up to date with what we're doing. Yeah. There's another question in the back.
Oh yeah, I'm George.
Hi.
And hi. In the morning we had this UX session, and most of the stuff that were discussed was around identifying the problems and then coming up with a solution. So with Bonga, what were some of the problems that you identified from the users, and then you thought, okay, maybe Bonga is the solution to their problems?
That's a very good question. So one advantage we have is that we have lots and lots of data. So we looked at the data and we could see trends. Some of the trends were, and I think it was what he said was, so a transaction, it will be a conversation, transaction, and then a conversation. So a sandwich. So we had to maintain that sandwich in designing Bonga. People confirm. It's so funny. Like you'll receive the M-Pesa confirmation message, but you'll still ask, umepata pesa? You know, have you got the money? So we saw this especially in the purchasing of goods, you know, buying or selling a good. So we said, oh, that. Another thing we realized is there are many side hustlers. So we could tell that there are between maybe 2.5 to 3.8 million side hustlers. How do we tell that? We can see that there's a regular, you know, movement of money, maybe 500 bob every day to this account to many. So you infer, it's a hypothesis because we didn't go around and ask, you know, 2 million people if that's what they're doing. So we could see a trend that these people, we assume they have day jobs. I don't know how that was gleaned. And then, yeah, and then now we could see that they're doing side businesses. So then we thought, if you have a day job and you want to do a side business, how can we help you do that? And so we thought, oh, you have this on your hand all the time. I mean, you're always distracted. I know Marie is looking at me like, hey, time. Okay, we'll have one last session. Anyway, so we looked at that. We looked at the data that we have, made inferences, tried to go to the field and to confirm our, you know, our hypotheses. So we have to go to the field and test the hypotheses, then see what people are doing. Then, so we start with that hypothesis. We go and validate the hypothesis. Then we come up and generate user requirements. Yeah, so we started with the data, but we have to go to the field. So we won't talk to 2.5 million people, but we may talk to like 10 guys who have jobs, who have side hustles. So the guys who come around selling peanuts and chapati and, you know, honey, but they're your colleague. So you talk to them and understand what they are. Then now you build it up like that, yeah. So yeah, if there's a last question, yes.
Thank you. My name is Wilfred again. So I had one question, then maybe two comments. One was, in terms of designing your app, are you using any metrics that you're tracking how people are actually interacting with the app and seeing if they're hovering around some place?
In fact, the metrics person is Lucky, who's seated right here. So you can tell us the tools we're using. So for the UX side, we use HCD, and for him, he uses a whole bunch.
Yeah, so interesting problem. We started by investigating Google Analytics, which would be your default choice. I mean, if you're doing tracking on mobile apps, because that's what, in essence, Bonga is. It didn't fit our needs. We explored a bunch of different tools. And finally, we settled on two of them, right? So we settled on something called Segment. For me, that was my go-to tool because mainly I was interested in seeing actual events, right? So when you open Bonga, when you click on a button, when you generate an event, like you're sending money or, you know, requesting money, all of that. So it gives me that at a very granular level, right? Of course, I can customize that, and I can even tie it down to an MSISDN, you know, someone's number. But then there's also a tool called HCD that Kagonya mentioned that for us was really, really awesome when we came across it. So that one takes it a notch higher. So now you're looking at stuff like what? You can track user journeys, right? You can track location data, you can track crash analytics, which was really, really awesome. Like it gives you a play-by-play what this guy was doing before it crashed and the actual error message. It even allows us to track people who are trying to hack the app, which was quite interesting. When we launched, we saw a ton of activity in Mountain View, California. We don't know who those guys are. We actually thought it was going to come from China. Or Ukraine or something like that. So yeah, so for me, what I'd say right now is, if you're trying to answer that question, you might not find a one-size-fits-all, right? So you might need to try a bunch of different approaches to find the one that really does most of what it is you want to achieve. Yeah.
Thank you. Then, two quick comments. One is, I think you already answered this one in a way, because I was wondering whether you do any semantic analysis of the text, because if another way Outlook would tell you, you are going to attach something, but you haven't. So if someone tells me I'm broke, then maybe you can make that green button flash that whoever is conversing with gets the hint that you could actually send some money from here. But you said it's encrypted, so maybe you could do a sandbox for the app.
Yeah.
Then the other one is, I was wondering whether you'll have Bonga groups, because all of these fundraisings we're always called to. Maybe you could have groups so people can then raise money and send within there. Thank you.
We actually have a feature tailored exactly to that, which we're calling Kapu. So it's fundraising, having people to track, manage, and fundraise as a group. Because we fundraise for funerals, weddings, someone's birthday. We are a Harambee community. So we have a tool, we have a feature that we have in our pipeline that works exactly like that. But even just to go back to the tools question on what data we pick. So a lot of UX research is qualitative, but it's also quantitative. And the good thing about using AppSeed, it gives us a lot of quantitative data. And we can even segment it by phone. So we know that maybe the J7 phone, the users who use it, this is what they're, it even gives us heat maps. So we can see that, for example, if this whole screen if this button was never pressed, we'd be able to know that button is never pressed by particular phones. So what can we do? We can add a coach mark. Coach marks are those arrows that you get on your interface, like click here to do this. So now you can know to add a coach mark because you've seen that is never pressed. So we get quantitative data from the analytics tools, then qualitative data from user research or lab research that we have. This has been great, guys. Thank you very much. As I said, we are located across the road, and we are very approachable. So yeah, hopefully we'll be interacting with you guys a bit more. So thanks, guys.